We're pressing on in Zechariah. We'll be in Zechariah chapter 2 today, which is kind of I've called this a vision of the measuring line. Again, we're in Zechariah, and he has a series of these visionary predictions of Israel's future, visionary predictions that are supposed to and intended to strengthen his people, get them off stuck in terms of building the temple for him. Before we get into the chapter, I do thank you again for the many emails and text messages I've gotten concerning the death of my father-in-law and my mother-in-law before him. And Sherry and I, my wife, continue. We're in a Airbnb in beautiful Licking, Missouri right now, and finishing up closing his estate. She's got the responsibility for being the trustee for his estate, so quite a lot to do before we leave. So that's where we're at, and sometimes there's some delay in releasing these. I am grateful for you, and my passion for you, my desire, my prayer for you is to be in God's Word. It's kind of the point of my Theo Faith ministry, which you have been generously supporting, and is to get people in the Word and encourage them to be reading God's Word. This year we focused on the minor prophets, last year the major prophets. So we'll be looking forward to 2024, where we'll be looking at other portions of God's Word that'll be announced shortly here. Let's get through Zechariah and Malachi before we start looking forward to that. So back to Zechariah chapter 2. This is the third of 8 visions. First we had that vision of the man among the myrtle trees. Then we had the vision of those 4 craftsmen, where the message of the men in the myrtle trees is that God is among his people. He sees the plight of his people. Those craftsmen, that God will vindicate his people. And then here we're going to see this vision of a man with a measuring line, which is an assurance that God will restore the glory of Jerusalem. So we see how this is developing as we go. I want to divide this chapter into kind of 3 small bites. Verses 1 through 4 is the expansion of Jerusalem, a vision of that. 5 through 9 is the vindication of Israel before the world. And in verses 10 through 13 is a vision of celebration and exhortation to celebrate. So, verse 1, I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a man with a measuring line in his hand, and I said to him, where are you going? And he said, to measure Jerusalem, to see how wide it is and how long it is. And the angel who was speaking to me was going out, and another angel was coming out to meet him. And he said, run, speak to that young man. Kind of interesting here, this dynamic conversation that's going on. Jerusalem will be inhabited without walls because the multitude of men and cattle within it. So in other words, put your measuring line away. You're not going to need that. There's a time coming when Jerusalem will be so full to overflowing of men and cattle. And the cattle is speaking, of course, of prosperity among the people there. So this, again, is this vision that there's going to be this period of time when Jerusalem and Judah is restored. Now, this is, of course, not yet realized. If you've been watching the news, you see the attack that's ongoing here in Israel's response. Jerusalem is really the Temple Mount particularly is not under Israel's formal control. It's actually under the control of Jordan. So this is not happening now, but it's going to be realized in the millennium. I like Isaiah 49, verses 19 through 20. Let me read that to you. It says in verse 19, for your waste and desolate places and your destroyed land, surely now you will be too cramped for the inhabitants, and those who swallowed you will be far away. The children of whom you were bereaved will yet say in your ears, the place is too cramped for me. Make room for me that I may live here. So again, it's even the dead children. They were bereaved of their children, and there won't be enough room for those resurrected believers in Jerusalem during the millennial reign of the Lord. The promises for the future, of course, impact the present. In this particular case, I think Israel is to be encouraged that they have a better future awaiting them. There's a better future that's coming. Also, the church. There are promises to encourage us. We have promises of the resurrection of church-age believers at the coming of the Lord and the rapture, the salvation during the tribulation of people coming into the millennial kingdom who come to faith during the tribulation. They, of course, won't be part of the church per se, but the point is that there are promises in God's word that apply to Israel and apply to the church, and we are to take comfort in them. We are to have confidence, even rejoice in them now. Verse 5 then begins this vindication. And the Lord, at this point, speaks directly concerning what the angel has said at the end of verse 4. And he makes 4 declarations in these verses. First, he declares he's going to provide supernatural protection for his people. At the first part of verse 5 there, I will be a wall of fire around her. He's going to be present among them. That's his second promise in verse 5b, that he is going to be glory in her midst. In verse 6, he declares, the beginning of verse 6, that they're going to return from their dispersion. And at the end of verse 6, his right to call them back because he is the one who commanded their dispersion. So God's assuring them that he's going to call them back from the dispersion that he sent them out on. So again, 4 declarations that the Lord makes directly that lead to the vindication of Israel. Verses 8 to 9 then, we see actually the Messiah speaking now, saying that he has been sent to reclaim the glory of God by vindicating him among the nations who have come against Jerusalem. So this again is a prehistory of the coming of Jesus, the second coming of Jesus at the end of the tribulation to vindicate his people among the nations, before the nations. And we'll see more of that in Zechariah 14. So the original readers were to, I guess, live in anticipation of this great vindicating reversal of history where God's glory is going to be restored to Jerusalem, going to be restored to Israel. Today, as God is working to show his glory to his people now through the church until the rapture. Remember, Paul talks about how the church is to be stirring up Israel to jealousy because we are displaying God's glory. We Gentiles, we the church, are displaying God's glory and not Israel. He says he's going to, until the rapture, continue to do that, and then he reclaims the earth. He's going to live, come and reclaim Israel, reclaim the earth as his own, and in the meantime, I am to be living confidently right now in the church, not wringing our hands, not worrying, but confident in what God is going to be doing. I want to point out as well this recurring theme throughout the Bible. We talked about those 4 craftsmen, kind of analogous to the 4 creatures in the book of Revelation. One of the other themes we see through the Bible is God being among his people, God being physically and tangibly among his people. And we see that again repeated here, that he will dwell among them. Come to verse 10 then, we see this call to celebration. The proof that the Messiah has come will be when he asserts his authority over the nations. That's what verse 9 says. But then in verse 10, it says Jerusalem is to sing now in light of what's coming. Not later, but now. It doesn't mean that they're pretending like nothing bad has happened to them, but they're anticipating the future. And we see this again as a recurring theme in God's word, that prophecy is to encourage us to live godly, in other words, God-centered lives today. God's prophetic word is to bring us joy, as now both Israel and the church look forward to the coming of the Messiah. So we should be looking forward to his coming. So I pray, brothers and sisters, that you are joyful, that you are looking forward to the Lord's vindication of his ancient people, and that you are looking forward with joy to the return of the Lord and the establishment of his premillennial kingdom on the earth. God bless you, and may you rejoice in the Lord.